I am going to just skip past the other convenings. There was one called Art is a Way of Knowing. STEM to STEAM was another one. That's where the STEM to STEAM thing really sort of started to pick up. And I think there's two things I just want to mention. One is that the overarching takeaways of all of those 7 convenings that I went to is that initially there's some sort of you have to kind of navigate the terrain of being able to collaborate and have a conversation across these disciplines. And part of that had to do with things like, and you heard a little bit of this earlier today, but the people on the science side saying, you know, you don't own the monopoly on creativity. We have creativity in our field as well. And on the art side saying, we don't want to just be brought in here to explain your science for a broader impact. Where it really gets to be interesting is when what they're doing is bringing a different set of tools to look at something and to try to advance knowledge and understanding. I mentioned at lunch, it's sort of like this notion of different tools in a toolkit, whether it's scientific method or artistic inquiry, being able to look at something and try to understand it better and try to recognize and maybe illuminate research objects, for example, that you might not be able to perceive on your own. And it's kind of like a wonder twin powers activate kind of an idea. And the last thing, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the DoD PTSD TBI investigation has, for me, illuminated this complicated arts ed thing. And I'll tell you why. The idea of this is that there's a laboratory for PTSD and TBI healing at Walter Reed called the National Intrepid Center of Excellence. And the idea is that you have this wheel of care, and it goes from traditional Western sort of interventions, and then it gets into complementary things. So it goes psychotherapy, occupation therapy, et cetera, and then it gets into mind-body stuff and yoga, and arts therapy is up sort of in that neck of the globe. And the idea is that it's a very hyper-integrative care environment where they're sharing intelligence back and forth about this person in the middle. And when we went in there, we were really excited and committed, and we still are, to try to understand what is the efficacy of an arts intervention in this sort of healing environment, especially for psychological health issues. And we started going through the lit reviews on writing. We came in with a writing program. Really didn't come out of an arts venue at all. It came out of psychology. So it was focused mostly on exposure therapy and, you know, write about your trauma, write about it again, and eventually you'll habituate to it and you'll get used to it and you'll be okay. And what we were finding with these guys, they'd come in for 4 weeks, is that a little ways into it, they were like, yes, I did need to sort of make sense of that, but now I'm, you know, what a piece of work as a man. There's other things that they wanted to unpack. And so it's the idea of goes all the way back to Aristotle in the Lit Review on bringing intellectual clarity from emotional chaos. And I think in that venue, you have so many things happening, so many different interventions happening, and then you have this art moment where you're unpacking whatever is that's on your mind. And for us to try to track and measure what the impact of that isolated intervention is in a multimodal environment was a real challenge, and we started to realize that in some ways it was the opposite of what we're actually seeing. It's almost as if you're trying to isolate the impact of a piston by removing the gasoline and the spark. It's all of this chaotic information that's happening, and you use the art making to make sense of it. And I think in the arts education arena, where we often fight for, or we think about having to fight for time in a day and limited resources, et cetera, in this environment where you have the same issues happening, you have the other providers asking to expand the arts making because it's making everything around it more informed, more better. But it's something that accelerates the ability of the whole process. And I think if we can think about arts education in that same venue so that we're talking about the kid, not necessarily how much time we're spending with him compared to somebody else, it might end up being more impactful.